Hello, welcome to Andy Tales. After watching the video, make sure there's no one else in the room. Don't forget to write your city and the time in the comments.
The library book that watched me. I've always been a bookworm, a trait I inherited from my mother, who filled our house with novels and poetry collections, their pages worn from years of love. As a child, I'd spend hours in our local library, losing myself in stories that transported me to distant lands or whispered secrets of the past, tales of pirates, haunted castles, and forgotten gods. That love never faded. Even now, in my late 20s, I find solace in the quiet corners of libraries, the scent of old paper and leather, a comfort against the chaos of my day job as a data analyst. So when I heard about a new library opening in an old building downtown last fall, I was eager to explore it, especially on a rainy October afternoon when the city felt gray and heavy, the streets slick with water under a sky that promised more rain. The building itself was a marvel, a Gothic structure that seemed to rise from the mist, its stone facade weathered by decades, its stained glass windows casting fractured rainbows across the sidewalk. The architecture hinted at a grand past, tall arches, intricate carvings of vines and faces frozen in silent screams, and a heavy oak door that creaked as I pushed it open. The air inside was cool and still, thick with the musty scent of aged paper, polished wood, and something faintly metallic, like rust lingering in the corners. My footsteps echoed off the marble floors, the sound bouncing off the towering shelves that stretched to the vaulted ceiling, each one packed with books that seemed to lean forward as if eager to be noticed. The library was nearly empty, a stark contrast to the bustling public libraries I was used to. A few patrons sat scattered at long tables, their heads bent over open books, their faces obscured by the dim light filtering through the stained glass. The librarian, a frail woman with gray hair pulled into a tight bun, sat behind a massive oak desk, her fingers tracing the edges of a ledger. Her glasses were thick, their lenses catching the light in a way that hid her eyes, giving her a hollow, almost ghostly appearance. She nodded at me as I entered, her lips pressing into a thin line, but she didn't speak, just returned to her work, the scratch of her pen the only sound breaking the silence. I wandered through the aisles, my fingers trailing along the spines, the titles worn but intriguing, each one a promise of a story waiting to be uncovered. The shadows grasped, whispers of the forgotten, the Watcher's tome, the names sent a shiver down my spine, their Gothic flair matching the library's ambience. I pulled down a book at random, its cover a faded black with no title, the leather cracked and peeling, the pages yellowed and brittle as if they'd been handled by countless hands over centuries. I opened it, expecting a novel or a collection of poems, but the pages were blank, every one of them, except for a single line scrawled in the center. Look closer. The ink was black, the script shaky, the letters shimmering faintly as if lit by an unseen source, a soft green glow that pulsed like a living thing. I frowned, flipping through the book, the pages crackling under my fingers, but the message repeated on every leaf. Look closer, over and over, the handwriting growing more erratic, the glow intensifying with each turn. The air grew colder, the musty scent of the library sharpening into something metallic, like rust or dried blood, and I felt a prickle at the back of my neck, a sensation that made my skin crawl as if unseen eyes were tracking my every move. I glanced around, expecting to see the librarian or a patron watching me, but the aisles were empty, the shadows lengthening despite the overhead lights, which flickered faintly, their buzz a low drone in the stillness. I closed the book, intending to put it back on the shelf, my hands trembling slightly, but as I did, I heard a whisper, soft, almost imperceptible, emanating from the pages themselves. Look closer, it rasped, the voice low and guttural like it was clawing its way out of the paper, struggling to be heard over the hum of the lights. My heart skipped, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead, and I opened the book again. The words shifting before my eyes, rearranging into a new phrase, I see you. The letters glowed brighter now, the green light pulsing like a heartbeat, and I caught my reflection in the glass of a nearby display case. Not just my face, wide-eyed and pale, but something behind me, a figure, tall and thin, its outline blurred against the shelves. Its body shrouded in shadow, its eyes two glowing points, white and unblinking, staring over my shoulder with an intensity that made my stomach drop. I spun around, my breath catching in my throat, expecting to confront whatever was behind me, but the aisle was empty, the shelves looming silently, their shadows stretching toward me like grasping fingers. I looked back at the book, and the figure was closer now, its long arms reaching out, its fingers brushing the edge of my reflection in the glass, the tips glowing with the same sickly green as the symbols. The whisper turned into a chant, I see you, I see you, I see you, the words overlapping, building into a rhythm that echoed in my ears, my mind like it was burrowing into my thoughts. I felt a cold breath on my neck, sharp and icy despite the empty space around me, and my reflection smiled, a slow, unnatural grin that I didn't make, its glowing eyes locked on mine, mirroring the figure's gaze. Panic surged through me, and I slammed the book shut, the sound reverberating through the library like a gunshot, the echo bouncing off the marble and stained glass, drawing a faint gasp from somewhere deep in the stacks. The chant grew louder, seeping into my skull, the figure's reflection pressing closer, its hands now flat against the glass, leaving faint smears that glowed with that same green light. I stumbled backward, my shoulder hitting a shelf, knocking a row of books to the floor with a crash, their pages fluttering like startled birds. The lights flickered violently, plunging the aisle into darkness for a split second before returning, and I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the back of the library, their rhythm matching the chant, I see you, I see you, I see you. I clutched the book to my chest, my hands slick with sweat, and ran, weaving through the aisles, my sneakers slipping on the marble, the shelves seeming to close in, their shadows twisting into shapes that mimicked the figure's form. The footsteps grew louder, faster, like something was pursuing me, and I caught a glimpse of movement at the corner of my eye, a tall, thin shadow darting between the stacks, its glowing eyes flashing before vanishing into the dark. The librarian's desk loomed ahead, but it was deserted, the chair pushed back, the ledger open to a blank page, the thick glasses abandoned, their lenses reflecting nothing but the empty air. The front door was my only escape, its stained glass panels casting fractured light across the floor, the colors warped by the rain outside. I pushed through, the heavy oak groaning as it gave way, the cold rain hitting me like a slap, soaking through my jacket and plastering my hair to my face as I stumbled into the street. The book was still in my hands, its cover warm despite the wet, the chant echoing, I see you, I see you, I see you, even as I ran down the sidewalk, the library fading into the gray haze behind me, its gothic silhouette swallowed by the mist. I didn't stop until I reached my apartment, my clothes drenched, my breath ragged as I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking so badly I dropped them twice before managing to unlock the door. I slammed it shut, leaning against it, the book slipping from my fingers to land with a soft thud on the hardwood floor. I sank to my knees, my chest heaving, telling myself it was a prank, a bizarre artifact designed to scare, but the chant lingered, faint but persistent, like a voice carried on the wind through the cracks in the walls. The next morning, I woke to find the book on my nightstand, its pages blank again, the phrase "look closer" scrawled inside in that same shaky script, the green glow pulsing faintly. I tried to return it that day, driven by a need to rid myself of it, but the library was gone, its place marked by a vacant lot, the ground uneven. Littered with broken glass and weeds, the Gothic building erased as if it had never stood. I stood there, the rain starting again, my breath fogging in the cold air, and felt a chill that sank into my bones, a certainty that I hadn't escaped. I asked a passerby, a man with a dog on a leash, if he knew about the library, but he just shook his head, saying, "Ain't been nothing there but an empty lot for years, miss. You sure you got the right spot?" I nodded, my throat tight, and walked away, the book heavy in my bag, its presence a weight I couldn't shake. I searched online when I got home, my fingers trembling as I typed variations of Gothic library downtown and haunted book, but there was nothing, no official records, no reviews. Just a single forum post from a user who hadn't logged in since 2008. The post described a library that appeared and vanished, always with a book that whispered, its pages alive, its watchers tall, thin figures with glowing eyes, never leaving those who looked too long. The user claimed they'd thrown the book away only to find it back on their shelf, the chant driving them to sleepless nights until they moved across the country. The thread ended with a warning, "It sees you forever." I don't go to libraries anymore, don't even browse bookstores or thrift shops, too afraid of what I might find tucked between the pages. I threw the book in the trash, watched the garbage truck take it away, but it reappeared on my coffee table the next morning, its cover warm to the touch, the phrase "look closer" glowing faintly inside. I tried burning it, the flames licking the edges before dying out, leaving the book intact, the chant growing louder, "I see you," as if mocking my efforts. I keep it locked in a metal box now, buried in a closet under a pile of blankets, but I still hear that voice, "I see you," faint and distant on quiet nights when the rain falls and I feel those glowing eyes watching me from the shadows. Their presence a weight I can't escape. I sleep with the lights on, the curtains drawn tight, every creak of the floorboards sending my heart racing, and I never open that box, terrified of what might happen if I do. I've moved twice since that day, hoping to leave it behind, but the book always finds me, appearing in a drawer or under my pillow, its pages whispering my name. I don't know what it is, what lives within it, but I know it saw me that day in the library, and I'm terrified that one day it will open itself and I won't have the strength to look away or to run. I've always been a planner, the kind of person who maps out every detail of a trip, from boarding passes to backup routes, but no amount of preparation could have saved me that day. I had just finished a grueling conference in a city halfway across the country, leaving me with only 90 minutes to catch my connecting flight home. The taxi driver, distracted and muttering in a language I couldn't understand, dropped me off at the wrong terminal, and I took off running toward the security checkpoint, my heart pounding like I was in a race against time. Sweat dripped down my collar, the departure board overhead flashing a menacing red, "Last call." My carry-on banged against my knee with every step, the crowd in the terminal a chaotic blur of faces and bags, their voices a dull roar in my ears. Someone shoved a suitcase into my leg, the sharp jolt sending a stab of pain through my shin, and I gasped out a curse before I could stop myself, the word echoing in the bustling hallway. I didn't notice the woman in the long skirt standing nearby until she turned, her pale face twisting with a glare that felt like a dagger, her eyes unnaturally wide, her lips moving silently as if chanting something under her breath. Before I could process her reaction, two security guards materialized, stepping in front of me like they'd been waiting for me to slip up. Their movements were too synchronized, their faces blank, and they demanded my documents with voices that sounded hollow, almost mechanical. One gestured toward a small glass room off the transit area, his hand steady as he ordered me to follow. I stammered a protest, my mind racing with the ticking clock, but they steered me through the door, their grips firm, the air inside heavy with the smell of old plastic and disinfectant, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a swarm of insects. I tried to explain, my voice shaky, that I was about to miss my flight, but they didn't care, their eyes cold and unblinking, like they were looking through me rather than at me. One pointed to a chair, and I sat, my backpack slipping off my shoulder with a thud, the panic about my flight still clawing at my chest. I glanced at the clock on the wall, each tick a hammer blow to my dwindling chances, but I had no idea that missing my plane was about to become the least of my worries. Behind the desk sat an officer in a crisp uniform, not a hair out of place, his movements eerily precise, like a mannequin brought to life. His voice was soft but sharp, asking why I thought it was appropriate to use offensive language in a public space, his tone carrying a weight that made me sit up straighter. I rushed to explain, my words tumbling over each other, saying I was tired, that my leg hurt after the suitcase hit me, but he barely glanced at my shin, his pen scratching across a notepad with a sound that grated on my nerves. He asked if my curse was directed at anyone specific, and I shook my head, describing the man in the blue jacket who'd hit me, but the officer's face remained unchanged, his writing relentless. Through the glass walls, I saw her, the woman in the long skirt, gliding through the metal detector, untouched, unnoticed, her handbag swinging as she vanished into the crowd, her skirt trailing behind her like a shadow that didn't quite belong. My passport sat on the desk, untouched, and my phone buzzed weakly in my pocket, a notification flashing, my flight delayed until tomorrow. The second officer, younger but just as cold, suggested filing a formal report, mentioning a fine, his words a quiet threat. I swallowed my frustration, asking to contact my consulate, and his expression shifted, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face before he left the room without a word, the door clicking shut with a sound that felt final. I sat alone, the hum of the airport mixing with my heartbeat, and then I heard it. a faint whisper, watch you, watch you, watch you, coming from the walls, the glass, the air itself, the words slithering into my ears. The door opened and the first officer returned, dropping my passport on the desk with a mechanical smile, saying, "You're free to go," his voice flat, devoid of humanity. I grabbed my passport, shoving it into my jacket, and stumbled back into the terminal, the crowd swallowing me, but the whisper followed, watch you, watch you, watch you, and I felt eyes on me glowing, white, unblinking, watching from reflections in the glass. The metal detectors, the polished floor. At the airport hotel, checking in for the night, I noticed the staff barely looked at me, their disinterest a stark contrast to the scrutiny I'd faced, but my passport, dark blue with gold stars, seemed to hum in my pocket, a weight I couldn't ignore. I spent the night calculating expenses, hotel, food, taxis, cursing myself for that one careless word, but the whisper lingered, watch you, and I saw her in my dreams, the woman in the long skirt, her face a void, her eyes glowing, her lips chanting my name. The next day, I boarded my rescheduled flight, every word I spoke measured, every movement cautious, but the feeling of being watched never left, a shadow trailing me across the ocean. Back home, desperate to escape the memories, I took a job from an old friend, a guy I hadn't seen since high school, always chasing risky deals, his smile too wide, too reckless. He promised easy money, no boss, just deliveries, and I agreed, needing to pay off debts and move out of my cramped basement apartment. The office was sterile on the 26th floor of a glass building, the elevator reeking of stale coffee and metal polish. A man in a windbreaker handed me car keys, a cheap GPS, and an envelope, his eyes cold, his words curt. Drop off, no questions. The first few runs were simple, hotels, train stations, quick handoffs, stacks of bills in return, but I noticed the addresses never matched public maps and the office was always empty except for him. By the fifth run, I was cocky, dreaming of paying off my loans, but the envelope felt heavier that day, thicker, the plastic cloudy, a small tear revealing something inside, not papers, but a faint, metallic glint. I tore it open in traffic, the air filling with a sharp, chemical smell, bitter and burning, my head swimming, my vision blurring. The GPS screen glitched, the route dissolving into static, and I heard it again, watch you, watch you, watch you, the whisper from the airport, now louder, coming from the envelope, the car, the air. My hands jerked the wheel, horns blaring, headlights blinding me, and everything went black. I woke on a worn couch in a windowless room, the walls a sickly pale, a fluorescent lamp buzzing overhead like a dying insect. A man in a white coat sat beside me, his face blank, counting my pulse, his voice flat, short-term effect. Rest. My mouth tasted of metal, my tongue heavy, and on the table sat a thick envelope of bills, a plane ticket, and a warning, forget curiosity. Work as told or don't work. I nodded, the whisper echoing, watch you, and I saw her in the corner of the room, the woman in the long skirt, her glowing eyes unblinking, her skirt pooling like liquid shadow. They sent me home, a one-way ticket, a black sedan waiting outside, the driver silent as he sped through traffic. My suitcase reappeared at the airport, but my friend's number was disconnected, his promises a lie. At the checkpoint, my hands shook, the officers waving me through without a glance, their indifference a cold blade. On the plane, I saw her reflection in the window, her face a void, her eyes glowing, the whisper louder, watch you, her shadow stretching across the cabin. I moved to a small town, took a job stacking boxes in a warehouse, checking each one obsessively, the chemical smell haunting my dreams, the whisper following me, watch you, in every shadow, every reflection. I tear up mail without looking, my coworkers laughing at my paranoia, but I see her in the warehouse mirrors, tall, thin, her glowing eyes watching, her chant a promise. I sleep with the lights on, doors locked, but I'm terrified that one day an envelope will arrive and her shadow will step out and I won't be able to run. The gas station in the fog. I've always despised long drives, a fear rooted in childhood memories of my father's endless road trips where the night pressed against the windows like a living thing and every shadow seemed to pulse with menace. The isolation of the open road, the hum of the engine, the distant wail of a truck horn, it all gnawed at me, a primal dread I could never shake. But life doesn't care about fears. Last winter, I had to drive 3 hours to visit my grandmother in a remote rural hospital after she'd taken a bad fall, her frail voice cracking over the phone, laced with pain and desperation as she begged me to come. It was late, just past 11 p.m. when I set out, the roads deserted except for the occasional trucker's silhouette, their headlights slicing briefly through the fog that had begun to roll in, thick and gray, coiling around the car like tendrils of some monstrous entity. The sky was a void, no stars, no moon, just an oppressive blackness that seemed to swallow the light, the fog growing denser with every mile, a suffocating shroud that turned the world into a nightmare of blurred edges and unseen threats. My old sedan's headlights struggled to penetrate it, the beams reflecting back like the eyes of something watching, creating a tunnel of light that felt more like a trap than a guide. The radio crackled with static, the late-night talk show host's voice distorting into a guttural murmur that made my skin crawl, my mind racing with worry for my grandmother, her broken hip, her fragile frame. The image of her blood-streaked face from the fall haunting me. I'd meant to fill up the tank before leaving, but I'd been frantic, tossing a bag into the car and racing out, a mistake that would soon plunge me into terror. About an hour into the drive, my gas light blinked on, the warning chimes slicing through the static, a shrill cry that jolted me upright, my hands tightening on the wheel. I cursed aloud, the sound swallowed by the fog, and checked the gauge, barely a quarter tank, the needle hovering dangerously low. The GPS flickered, its screen glitching, showing no stations for miles, but I recalled a weathered sign I'd passed minutes ago, its letters barely legible through the haze. Hollow rest stop, next exit. It wasn't on the map, a detail that sent a shiver down my spine, but desperation drove me to take the exit, the car dipping onto a narrow side road, the pavement cracked and crumbling, the trees on either side leaning in. Their gnarled branches scraping the windows like claws, the sound a relentless screech that echoed in my skull. The gas station loomed out of the fog like a specter from a fever dream, its neon sign flickering with the words "Hollow Rest Stop" in a stuttering red glow, the letters warped and dripping as if melting into the night. The station was a grotesque parody of normalcy, two pumps under a rusted canopy, the metal streaked with dark stains that might have been rust or something worse, and a tiny convenience store attached, its windows blacked out with grime. The light inside a sickly yellow that pulsed like a dying heart, barely illuminating the cracked pavement littered with broken glass and what looked like claw marks etched into the concrete. The air around it was thick, stagnant, reeking of gasoline, rotting flesh, and a sulfurous undertone that made my stomach heave. The fog clung to the building, swirling in unnatural spirals, as if alive, whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. I pulled up to a pump, the gravel crunching under my tires with a sound like bones breaking, and killed the engine, the silence crashing in, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the sign's erratic buzz and the wet, guttural drip of something viscous from the canopy, each drop splattering onto the ground with a sound that felt like a heartbeat. I stepped out, the cold biting into my bones, the air damp and rancid, the smell overwhelming, like a charnel house left to fester. The pump was a relic, its dial rusted, the numbers erased by time, the handle sticky with a substance I didn't dare examine. I swiped my card, the machine screeching like a wounded animal, the screen flashing, approved in jagged blood-red letters before dimming, and I began pumping, the gas gurgling into the tank, the sound a sickly gurgle that seemed to mock me. That's when I heard it, a low, guttural hum, rising from the store, a sound that vibrated in my chest, like the growl of something ancient and hungry. I glanced over, my breath catching, and saw a figure in the doorway, tall and unnaturally thin, its silhouette warped by the fog, its head cocked at an impossible angle, as if its neck had been snapped and reattached. Its face was a void, a smooth expanse of shadow, but two glowing eyes pierced the haze, white and unblinking, radiating a cold malice that rooted me to the spot. The hum coalesced into words, stay here, stay here, stay here, the voice a wet rasp, dripping with menace as if spoken by a throat filled with blood and bile. The fog thickened, coiling around my legs, the air growing frigid, the rancid smell intensifying, and I felt a pressure in my head like something was clawing at my thoughts. I ripped the nozzle free, the gas spilling in a dark torrent, the fumes choking me, and turned to flee to the car, my legs trembling, but the figure was closer now, standing at the canopy's edge, its long arms dangling, its claw-like hands twitching. each finger tipped with a glowing, festering sore that pulsed with green light. The hum surged into a chant, "Stay here, stay here, stay here," the words burrowing into my skull, my vision blurring with images of the fog swallowing me, the station becoming my tomb. I heard a new sound, a wet, dragging scrape like flesh tearing, coming from behind the store, and the ground beneath me vibrated as if something massive stirred below. The canopy groaned, the rusted metal bending inward, and I saw shadows moving in the fog, dozens of them, tall and thin, their glowing eyes flickering like stars in a diseased sky. I threw myself into the car, slamming the door and locking it, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys, dropping them twice, the metal clattering against the seat like a death knell. The figure lunged, its claw-like hand slamming against the window, the glass cracking under the impact, the glowing sores leaving smears that hissed and smoked. Its face pressed closer, the void where its features should be splitting into a maw of jagged, needle-like teeth, dripping with a black ichor that sizzled on the glass. The chant roared, "Stay here, stay here, stay here," the sound of physical force pressing me back, and I saw more figures emerging from the fog, their claws scraping the pavement, their eyes converging on me, a chorus of malice. I screamed, the sound raw and broken, and jammed the key into the ignition, the engine coughing to life as I floored the gas, the tires spinning in the gravel before catching, the car lurching forward. The headlights flared, revealing a sea of glowing eyes, their bodies closing in, and I crashed through the lot, the figure's claw raking the trunk, leaving deep gouges that glowed with that sickly green. I didn't look back, my eyes fixed on the road, the fog parting reluctantly, the hum fading into a guttural snarl, "Stay here," lingering in my ears as I sped away, the station vanishing into the mist, its red sign winking out like a dying pulse. I didn't stop until I reached the hospital, my hands bloodied from gripping the wheel, the hum echoing in my skull, "Stay here," even as I stumbled inside, the fluorescent lights and antiseptic stench a cruel contrast to the nightmare I'd fled. I visited my grandmother, her frail hand squeezing mine, her eyes filled with tears, but I was a ghost, my mind replaying those eyes, that maw, those claws. I told myself it was a hallucination, a product of exhaustion and fog, but when I checked my credit card, there was no charge, no trace of hollow rest stop, just a blank void where the transaction should have been, as if it had never existed. I researched online when I got home, my hands trembling, typing "hollow rest stop" with dread, finding nothing official, just a thread on a forgotten forum, its posts dated across decades, describing a gas station that materialized in the fog. A trap for the unwary. Drivers spoke of a figure with glowing eyes and a maw of teeth. A chant that drove them mad. Disappearances that left no bodies. Only abandoned cars found with claw marks and smears of ichor. One user claimed they'd escaped, only to find the station reappearing in their rearview mirror years later, its sign calling them back, the fog swallowing them whole. I don't drive at night anymore. Don't take back roads. Always keep my tank full. The memory of that night a scar on my soul. I traded my sedan, its trunk still bearing those glowing gouges, for a new car, but the gas gauge drops inexplicably. The light blinking on in daylight, and sometimes in the fog, I see a red flicker in the distance, a sign that shouldn't be there. I hear that hum, "Stay here," faint and insistent, on foggy nights when the air reeks of decay, and I see those glowing eyes in my dreams, their maw opening wider, their claws reaching for me. I keep my windows up, my doors locked, but I'm terrified that one night, the fog will find me again, and this time, I won't escape the station's grasp.